Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, following our MC at night, he heads towards a nearby shop, noticing a swarm of people running out of the shop. Accidentally tripping over two girls and dropping his phone, our MC notices a man wielding a knife, hearing the man threatening to harm the girls. Holding himself from running away, our MC chooses to dash towards the attacker, tackling him to the ground, allowing the girls to run away. But suddenly our MC begins to faint, realizing that the attacker had accidentally stabbed him, running away and leaving our MC bleeding out on the floor. With the two girls running over to our MC's side, our MC is grateful to have protected the girls, finally falling unconscious. Suddenly waking up in a fancy-looking room, our MC notices a maid cleaning in his room, prompting the maid and our MC's mother to call our MC Kane. With Kane's mother asking if he remembers anything, Kane looks into a nearby mirror, realizing that he is in a new body. Looking at his tiny hands, Kane hears his mother and the maid talking about how Kane was asleep for a whole week, checking to see if Kane still has a fever. Realizing that her son may be hungry, Kane's mother calls the maid, Sylvia, to whip up a meal. As his mother and Sylvia leave for the time being, Kane has some time to digest what is happening, deducing that he must have passed away that night and reincarnated in this child's body, but at least he saved the two girls. Swiftly checking out the room he's in, Kane suddenly hears Sylvia coming back with some soup, but when Sylvia enters the room she realizes that Kane had accidentally wet himself. Cleaning up Kane, Sylvia feeds Kane the soup, noting how the soup comprises meat and vegetables, but the overall taste is a bit plain. Happy to see that Kane is now full, Sylvia hoists Kane onto her shoulder, patting Kane on the back in order to get him to burp. Sitting down at the table with his family, Kane states that he's figured out some details regarding his new life. Kane's full name is Kane von Silford and is 3 years old. Kane has a father named Garm, a mother named Sarah, and a sister called Rain who is 2 years older than him. Additionally, his mother Sarah is the second wife to his father, with the first wife being Maria, with two sons Jin and Alec, meaning that Kane is the third son out of the entire family. Kane's father Garm is a high-ranking noble, having his own army and is the protector of land south of Gracia in the kingdom of Esfort along with the protector of the forest of monsters. Curious about this world, Kane had asked Sylvia about monsters, learning that there are adventurers who slay monsters, who wield weapons and magic. Ecstatic that this world has magic, Kane is told by Sylvia that he must first learn who to read and write this world's language first, making Kane even more excited, as in his previous life, his last relative had passed and he was left all alone. His father learns of Kane's interest in reading and writing, asking how Kane has had a change of mind ever since his fever. Realizing that he can't reveal that he's not actually this family's son, Kane begins to throw a fit, unable to control his new baby body. But after being fed some milk, Kane calms down, asking if he can have access to his father's books on magic and the kingdom's history. Seeing as her little brother is interested in magic, Kane's sister Rain informs Kane that people are commonly baptized before they can even use magic. Alone in his room, Kane is able to conjure up a fireball in his palm, dancing as he's achieved an amazing feat for his age. Hearing Sylvia and Reen coming, Kane hides his magic capabilities, chatting with Reen who offers to teach Kane all she knows. Day after day, Kane would be taught by his sister, learning about the 300-year history of their kingdom of Esfort. Apparently, the first ever king started as an adventurer, slowly building his empire, but when Kane hears that the king's name was Yuya, he realizes that the king was probably Japanese and reincarnated as well. Continuing to listen, Kane hears that there are elves, dwarves and beast folk in this world, excited for when he can finally explore the outside world. Skipping 2 years ahead, Kane is finally 5 years old, dressed up for his baptism. Seeing as it's his big day, Kane's entire family is here with him for this momentous day, all traveling to the location by carriage. As Kane admires the townsfolk, he asks Rain what it's like after the baptism, prompting Rain to open a status window, showing off her skills. Spotting a title, Adorer of Kane, Kane gets embarrassed, changing topics and noting how Rain has 3 elemental affinities. Additionally, Kane learns that Rain was granted level 2 protection magic, where there are 5 levels for any skill and 5 is the highest mastery. Kane's mother states that protection magic is essential for casting spells and also dictates how powerful a spell is. Arriving at the town's church, Kane is amazed to hear that the church worships 7 pillars of gods, kneeling before the head priest who begins the baptism. As the head priest calls out the 7 gods to grant Kane his status, a sudden burst of light encases everyone, transporting Kane before the 7 gods. Introducing himself as Zenom, the god of creation and creator of the world, Zenom starts their roundtable meeting, asking Rhyme, the god of death and rebirths, to start. Rhyme acknowledges that Kane's death was quite tragic, having given his life for the 2 girls. But funnily enough, Rhyme reveals that if Kane hadn't intervened and stopped the attacker with a knife, the attacker would have actually tripped, allowing for passers-by to stop them. Sad that his death was not needed, Kane is happy to hear that due to his death, the attacker has been charged with murder, and the god of Earth had acknowledged Kane's brave act, giving him a second chance in this new world. With Rhyme apologizing for starting Kane off in a child's body, Kane asks that Rhyme not be sorry, as he's thankful to be given a life where he has a loving family, a complete contrast to his previous lonely life. Happy to see such a pleasant child, Reno, the god of magic, and Zenom grants Kane their protection, excited to see Kane's future progress. With the remaining gods, Sarnos, the god of war, Grim, the god of technology, Panam, the god of commerce, Bella, god of earth, all granting Kane their protection, they all reiterate that they expect great things from Kane, sending him back to the church. Having never heard of such a huge light appearing during baptism, Kane's father asks to see Kane's status window, but knowing that something is off, Kane makes up the excuse of needing to use the bathroom. Running off to privately check his stats, Kane is shocked to see all of his skills at level 10, crazy as the maximum level for any skill is meant to be 5. Needing a way to hide his outrageous stats, Kane remembers Zenom bestowing him the skill of creation magic, creating a spell to conceal his stats. Heading back home to celebrate, the entire family toast to Kane finally being baptized, asking once again for Kane's stats. Having used his concealment magic, Kane happily shows off his stats, but when his family looks through his skills, they are all shocked to see that Kane has the 7 gods' protection, noting how Kane has 35 times the mana capacity of a highly skilled mage. Realizing that he hadn't properly concealed his status, Kane's father states that everyone in the room is to keep Kane's stats a secret, as Kane himself could be considered a threat to the kingdom. Returning to his room, Kane notes how he should have concealed his stats even more, but for now he wonders if he can try out some summoning magic. Wanting to summon an adorable fluffy pet, Kane accidentally calls forth a monster. Kane notices the monster approaching his sister and friend Parma. Not wanting his loved ones to be hurt, Kane ignites his fist, aiming to strike down the monster, but instead is forced to take a ferocious punch. Before he faints, Kane is able to call back the monster, falling to the ground, as Rein and Parma run to his side crying. Luckily, with the gods' protection, Kane wakes up with no injuries, relieving his sister and Parma, noting how in the world he has power to protect people. That night, Kane's father has gathered everyone to hear Kane's decision on life, prompting Kane to proudly announce that he wants to be an adventurer. Happy to hear that Kane is pursuing adventuring, Kane's father states that he'll personally hire some tutors to help Kane get ready for the outside world. Waiting in his room, Kane wonders how strong his tutors will be, hearing that his tutors have arrived. Running to the window to catch a glance, Kane uses a teleportation spell, accidentally teleporting into the air, accidentally falling onto his 2 tutors. Having been cushioned by Breast, Kane apologizes, learning his tutors' names are Maestra Millie and Maestra Nina. Officially introducing themselves, Millie shyly introduces herself as a D-rank adventurer, whilst Nina calmly greets Kane and his family. Scolding Nina for being so nonchalant around nobles, Millie accidentally shows off Nina's elf ears, only to be interrupted by Kane, who asks the girls to be casual with him. Kane's father has hired Millie and Nina to tutor Kane for 3 years, getting Kane excited to see how strong he can become. Heading out to the training field, Millie asks to see Kane's swordplay, nonchalantly swinging and wielding a wooden sword. With both girls impressed, Millie asks to spar with Kane, shocked that Kane is able to keep up with her, even though Kane is only 5 years old. Asking if Kane has a protection, Kane reveals that he has the god of war's protection, explaining his genius with the sword. Completely tired out, Millie states that Kane will now learn magic from Nina, handing Kane off to Nina. Revealing that she has a level 3 protection for the god of magic, Nina states that she'll be teaching Kane the basics of elemental magic, but Kane shows off his mastery of basic spells, creating water, fire and rock spells, impressing the girls. Nina notes how Kane is capable of chantless magic, a technique that even elite sages can't even master, and on top of that Kane wields all elemental affinities. Seeing that Kane's spells have destroyed the training area's walls, the girls suddenly spot Kane wielding an item box, able to store and retrieve items. Knowing that Kane truly is a genius, Millie and Nina note how they need to move elsewhere as Kane may destroy the whole place. Just then Kane suggests that they train outside, revealing that he has never left his home before and that he can let loose and truly show his powers. Knowing that isn't a bad idea, the girls chat with Kane's parents, stating that they've gauged that Kane's powers surpass a beginner student, therefore they ask for permission to leave the castle, in order to teach Kane intermediate sword skills and magic. Knowing that this day would come, Kane's mother and father agree to let Kane train outside, but state that he must return home before sunset. With the castle gates opening, Kane rushes outside, admiring the vast greenery, only to head towards a nearby boulder. Given permission by Nina to cast an intermediate spell, Kane conjures a firewall, instantly blowing apart the nearby boulder and blowing the girls back. With such an intense spell, the girls note how Kane should be exhausted as intermediate spells cost a lot of mana, but it seems that Kane has quite a huge mana pool as well. Just then, Nina and Millie sense a creature approaching, spotting a killer rabbit appear from the nearby forest. Readying their weapons to slay the rabbit, the girls helplessly watch as the rabbit speeds past them, rushing Kane, who easily evades. Shooting air bullets, Kane nonchalantly slay his first monster, receiving congratulations from Millie and Nina. Wanting to show off his first kill to his family, Kane uses his item box to store the corpse, learning that Millie plans on buying a magic bag item that is supposedly able to function just like the item box, but it's a little pricey. Fired up, Millie asks Nina to search for more monsters to slay, prompting Nina to cast a search spell, spotting several creatures nearby. Amazed by Nina's spell, Kane learns that the search spell involves spreading a thin layer of magic into the surrounding, allowing for the users to sense other users with magic. Focusing, Kane copies Nina's spell, spotting the same creatures nearby, impressing Nina, who notes that Kane learnt the spell on his first try. With the three slaying the various creatures nearby, Kane fails to slay the last one, chasing it towards the nearby forest, but is suddenly called by Millie to never enter the forest. Apparently hundreds of strong monsters reside in that forest, and every few decades, all the monsters gather and wage an attack on the kingdom, hence the reason for the huge wars around the kingdom. Knowing that he must become strong enough to protect his home from these monsters, Kane heads home to check his stats, amazed that he's now level 8, only after one day of training. Checking his skills, Kane realizes that the gods have given him a skill that multiplies his XP gain by 100, scared that he'll have to hide this skill or else he'll be deemed a monster by others. The next morning, Millie and Nina reason that Kane should face stronger monsters, heading to the town's guild to gain information on tougher monsters. Introducing herself as Rudy, the guild receptionist, Rudy gets flustered to learn that Kane is a noble, stating that wolves are a step above killer rabbits. Just then, an adventurer interrupts the girls, insulting them for babysitting a kid all day. When Millie and Nina ask the adventurer to leave, the adventurer reminds the girls that he is Cross, a C-rank adventurer, grabbing a hold of Nina, prompting his men to restrain Millie. Before Cross can do anything indecent, Kane interrupts, asking Cross and his men to let go of the girls, but when Cross refuses, Kane strikes Cross in the arm. Retaliating, Cross attempts to punch Kane, but Kane easily dances around him, prompting Cross to grab his blade. Getting serious, Kane begins dodging all of Cross's slashes, catching the blade only to disarm and toss Cross out of the guild doors. Seeing Cross's men about to harm Millie, Kane knocks out and tosses the men out as well, gaining praise from Nina and Millie, who notes that Kane is quite impressive with his martial arts. Heading out, Kane begins to train his magic, taking breaks with the girls every so often. With 3 years passing, Kane learns that Millie and Nina's tutor roles are coming to an end, reasoning that he should get them a parting gift for all they've done. At night, Kane teleports outside of the castle, heading into the monster forest in search of items to craft magic bags for the girls. Slaying a blood ogre for Millie and an earth dragon for Nina, unknowingly drawing the attention of the kingdom's knights and his father, who set out to the forest, wanting to know the cause of the loud noises in the forest. When Kane's father and his men arrive at the forest, they realize that there are no monsters nearby, instead a single napkin of the perpetrator is left behind. The next evening, whilst Kane is slaying wolves, Millie and Nina note how it's quite sad, as their final day with Kane has arrived. Chatting with the girls, Kane unveils the red and green magic bags he's crafted for them as a parting gift, shocking the girls as the blood ogre and the green dragon Kane slayed normally need a whole rank party to defeat. Kane states that each magic bag should be able to store an entire mansion, prompting the girls to reveal that items are considered national treasures. Additionally, Kane had made it so that only they can hold the items, making them theft-proof, bringing the girls to their knees. Knowing that they'll never be able to repay Kane, Kane states that the time he's spent with them is easily more valuable, prompting Millie and Nina to lean in for a kiss on each cheek. Before Nina and Millie leave, they state that they'll come help with Kane whenever he wants in the future, signaling the end of their tutoring contract with Kane. That night, Kane's father confronts Kane, scolding Kane for causing such a ruckus and drawing so much attention in the monster forest, knowing that the napkin left behind belongs to Kane. Kane's father reiterates that Kane keeps his powers a secret, as it's what's best for him and the family. Deep in a cave, Kane faces a red dragon, puncturing it in the head, surprised that he was able to kill such a creature. Storing his sword in his item box, Kane checks his stats, completely stunned at the fact that he has over 80 million mana points and has the titles, Enemy to All Monsters and Dragon Killer. Now 10 years old, Kane with his family travels to the royal capital to make his debut, something required by all nobles. Thinking about the thought of living in the capital, Rain suggests that Kane and her both live together and attend the same school, but their father reminds Rain that students must be at least 12 years old before they can take the entrance exam. Knowing that Rain is 12 years old, Kane asks how excited Rain is, hearing that Rain promises to place first in her entire cohort, to show her little brother how amazing she is. Asking his father how long it'll take by horse-drawn carriage till the capital, Kane learns that it'll take about a week without interference, prompting Kane to cast a search spell in the nearby vicinity for monsters. Suddenly Kane notices tens of monsters swarming people far ahead, asking his father to send his men to help out. Knowing that backup won't arrive in time, Kane states that he'll go ahead of them, hopping out of the carriage and instantly propelling himself with some wind magic, in the direction of the monsters. Cutting to the battlefield, we see several knights protecting a carriage, ordering the princess in the carriage to hide. Before the monsters can devour the knights, Kane arrives, speeding past the monsters and firing air bullets to kill the monsters. Knowing that he may accidentally harm the knights with his magic, Kane pulls out a sword from his item box, infusing his blade with flames only to slay all the monsters. With the battle over, Kane goes to check on the knights, but they refuse to allow Kane to approach the carriage. Apologizing for the late introduction, Kane officially introduces himself as the son of Margrave Garm von Silford, placing the knights at ease, who begin to fall to the ground due to their injuries. Just then, Kane's father's knights arrive wondering how Kane arrived before them, but Kane has no time to explain, casting an area healing spell and explaining that the men should get some rest and refuel as they need to compensate for their blood loss. Sadly, Kane explains that he can't revive the fallen knights, storing their corpses in his item box, just before his family arrives. Leaping out of the carriage, Kane's father states that he has come to help, realizing that Kane had already cleaned up and handled the monsters. Noticing the crest of the Santan family on the carriage, Kane's father wants to know if the Duke of the Santana is safe. As the carriage door opens, Kane and his father drop to their knees, greeting the Princess Telestia and Miss Silk, happy to see that they are both unharmed. Seeing that Princess Teles is exhausted, Kane asks for permission to help aid the princess's exhaustion, casting a relaxation spell, calming both girls' nerves. Immediately introducing herself personally to Kane, Princess Telestia thanks Kane for all the help, but Silk von Santana butts in, admiring how Kane made use of magic and swordsmanship to slay the monster. With Telestia and Silk fighting over Kane's attention, they both hear that Kane is traveling to the royal capital, prompting the two to reveal that they both are heading to the capital as well, dragging Kane into their carriage and heading off before Kane's father can react. In the carriage, Kane is forced to sit in between Miss Silk and Princess Telestia, both still wanting Kane's attention. Seeing as Kane is so nervous, both girls tell Kane to drop the formalities and just call them Teles and Silk. Learning from one of the knights that they'll be arriving at the town of Renoma soon, Silk and Teles cling tighter to Kane, who's forced to accept the girls' advances. Stopping at their destination, Kane states that he'll meet up with the girls tomorrow, but the girls ask that Kane stay with them all night. Kane's father appears, stating that Kane sharing a room with a girl at his age isn't appropriate, but the girls reiterate that they don't trust anyone but Kane to protect them, forcing Kane to agree to sharing a room. With both girls wanting Kane to themselves, they agree to have Kane take the middle bed, both choosing to move their beds right next to Kane's bed. When Kane asks for the reason for this, the girls use the excuse of possible monster attacks during the night, hence why they must be as close as possible in case. Continuously spending time with Silk and Teles, Kane is forced to repeat various nights sharing a room together with the girls in different towns, up until they finally arrive at the kingdom. As the trio arrive at the royal kingdom, they are greeted by a high-ranking knight, asking to know who the girls are clinging to. Upon hearing that it's Kane, the knight introduces himself as the vice-captain of the Royal Chivalric Order, Dame von Gazard. Thanking Kane for protecting the girls, Dame asks for the corpses of the knights that he had stored, placing them in the courtyard. Before Kane leaves, Kane holds back tears, asking for these men to be honored, prompting Dame to promise that these men will not be forgotten. Before Kane can leave, Dame stops Kane, telling Kane that the king has summoned him. Entering the palace throne room, Kane walks past hundreds of nobles only to kneel before the king, Silk, Teles and the king's attendant. The king's attendant announces that they've identified the monsters as orcs, numbering 50 orcs with the orc general among their ranks, deducing that it must have been a planned attack. On top of that, the king's attendant states that Kane single-handedly took down all 50 orcs along with healing all the knights that endured the orcs' attack. Silencing the nobles from gossiping, the king announces that Kane will be bestowed the title of Baron, granting him 10 platinum coins and a mansion. Seeing as Kane is just a child, a noble by the name of Corgino refuses to accept Kane being granted such marvelous gifts, but the king explains that he sees a future in Kane and that good people like Kane should be rewarded and elevated. With Corgino backing down, Kane accepts the king's offer, but is asked to privately meet with him. Sitting down with his father, Kane's father states that Kane is the first to be promoted out of all his siblings. As the king arrives, he reassures Kane and his father that they can be comfortable with him, thanking Kane for saving his daughter Teles's life. On top of that, Silk's father, Eric von Santana Malbeek, also thanks Kane for saving his daughter Silk's life, prompting Kane to brush off his good deeds as a normal human reaction. Speaking up, the king states that he is aware of Kane's exceptional swordsmanship and magic prowess, hence the reason for him giving Kane enough money and a mansion to live freely and focus on his skills. Just then the king and Eric both ask Kane to marry their daughters, stating that Kane must take responsibility for sharing a bed with them. Flashing back a couple minutes ago, we see the king, Eric and his attendant brainstorming ways of getting a powerful boy like Kane to stay by their sides, asking if Silk and Teles are willing to marry Kane. With pressure from the king, Eric and the two girls, Kane accepts the proposal, but learns that he'll be engaged first, and when he turns of age will then marry them. Privately chatting with his family, Kane apologizes for getting involved with the royal family. Heading back to the Church of the Seven Pillars, Kane kneels before the gods, able to re-enter their realm to speak with them. Asking the gods why they had granted him absurd amounts of power, Zenom agrees that they may have overstepped with Kane's stats, but states that there is nothing that can be done and instead offers Kane to become a demigod. Asking what demigods are, Zenom states that demigods are on par with mystic beasts and divine dragons, but even these powerful creatures have limits, prompting Zenom to warn Kane to not go overboard with his gifted power. Before Kane exits the realm, the gods state that it's quite boring as there is really nothing else to do, so they ask that Kane create a form of entertainment for them, preferably something that existed in his previous life. Cutting to Rain and Kane's mother shopping for dresses, Kane gets too embarrassed watching, running outside to get some fresh air. Spotting cat ears from afar, Kane recognizes Parma, running over to greet her. Noting how it's been 5 years since they both spoke, Kane states that he's here for his debut in the capital, prompting Parma to state that she is training here at her uncle's shop. Introducing her uncle Tammany's to Kane, Parma states that Kane is a noble, making Tammany's nervous. But Kane asks that Tammany's be casual with him, heading into the store to check it out. Scoping out the items, Kane gets an idea for an item they could create, asking for Tammany's help. Sketching out his checkerboard game, Kane impresses Tammany's, who notes how Kane's idea should be simple to create and mass produce whilst also being easy to learn. Happy to hear Tammany's is on board, Kane gives Tammany's a gold coin, flustering Tammany's as quite a huge amount of money, but Kane states that he believes Tammany's will put the gold coin to good use, prompting Tammany's to swear as the head of the Saracen company that he'll succeed with this project. Heading back outside, Kane realizes that he had left Rain's side, angering her as she wanted to show off the dresses she had bought, but Kane compliments Rain's beauty, making her immediately forgive Kane for leaving. A couple of days later, Kane returns to Tammany's store, amazed that Tammany's was able to recreate the game he had in mind, naming it Reversey, like the game in his previous life. Playing through the game as a test run, Kane states that it's perfect, which Parma and Tammany's both agree as well. Seeing as this will be a popular product, Kane suggests that they need to create different versions of the product to cater to different people. Kane suggests creating 50 noble versions and 1,000 regular versions, and after the first release they'll see if they can get more backing to mass produce them. Thinking for a minute, Tammany's states that he is unsure if he'll have enough money to be profitable with the creation of these products, but Kane interrupts, handing Tammany's several more gold coins to help kickstart their production. Before they begin production, Tammany's states that they must now make a contract with the god of commerce, stating that once a contract is created, no one else will be able to create the same product for 3 years. With Kane and Tammany's placing their hands above the Reversey board they created, the board is gifted to the gods, officially sealing the contract. With the contract all set up, Kane states that they should sort everything out within a month, but before he leaves asks that Tammany's create an additional special board for the royal family, shocking Tammany's and Parma, noting how Kane has quite the connections. Remembering that his debut is today, we cut to Kane in a carriage with his parents, warned by his father that since Kane has already accumulated quite a lot of attention, he must be very careful as to not be seduced by other noble daughters. Entering the massive room, Kane begins walking around, spotting the noble Corgino that had attempted to refute Kane's baron status from the king along with his son. Knowing that they will be trouble, Kane purposely avoids them, spotting Silk and her father Eric. Realizing that their meeting was in private, Kane and his father reintroduce themselves, prompting Eric and Silk to reintroduce themselves. Admiring Silk's beauty, Kane begins flirting with Silk, but they are both interrupted by Eric, who states that Kane shouldn't so openly flirt with his daughter. As Kane and his parents head elsewhere, Kane's father notes how Kane is quite the player, but Kane states that he simply compliments girls, just like how he compliments his sister. Just then, the king and his family make their triumphant entrance, thanking everyone for gathering here today. With Kane's family's turn to reintroduce themselves to the king, Kane compliments Tellus's beauty, making Tellus blush, but the king clearly isn't fond of the open flirtiness. Taking out the especially crafted Reversey board, Kane manages to catch the king's attention, thanking Kane for such an interesting gift, but the king states that he needs to privately chat with Kane later. As Kane's family heads away from the royal family, Kane's father is impressed that Kane has started to think of ways to generate money, but states that he and Kane's mother have some things to attend to, leaving Kane alone. Just then, Silk appears, offering Kane a drink, sitting down and having a chat. Happy to be alone with Kane, Silk teases Kane, offering to call Kane master, but Kane refuses such a bold nickname. Before Silk can flirt with Kane further, they are interrupted by Corgino's son Habit and his sidekicks who admire Silk's beauty. Formally greeting Habit, Kane is scolded by Habit and his sidekicks, demanding Kane to kneel before him. When Kane refuses, Habit challenges Kane to a duel, demanding they head outside. Wondering why Silk had followed him, Silk teases Kane, stating that she was worried about him, but as Kane attempts to push Silk away, both Kane and Silk notice one of his sidekicks beginning to cast a spell. Watching as the sidekick embarrassingly chants a spell, they are both disappointed to see the sidekick's pathetic fireball spell, only to chuckle at the other sidekick's pathetic rock spell. Having had enough, Silk steps up stating that Habit and his sidekicks are clearly unaware of who Kane is, stating that he was recently granted the title of Baron, shocking Habit and his men, as they are aware of a kid that had recently single-handedly defeated an entire orc army alone. Profusely apologizing for disrespecting Kane, Habit and his men disappear, prompting Silk to state that she knows that Kane had purposely not revealed his Baron status to Habit, knowing that Habit and his men would embarrass themselves. Threatening to tell Tellus about Kane's naughty side, Silk promises to keep Kane's naughtiness today a secret if he goes on a date with her, but before he can answer, Tellus arrives. Before Silk can reveal what Kane's secret is, Kane blocks her mouth, giving Tellus the wrong idea, even more shocked when she hears that Kane is going on a date with Silk. Wanting to know the reason for Silk clinging to Kane and Kane's reason for going on a date with Silk, all of a sudden, Kane apologizes as it's a secret, but when he sees Tellus getting jealous, Kane promises to go on a date with Tellus as well. Unfortunately, Kane doesn't notice the king behind Tellus, scolding Kane for openly flirting with his daughter. Later that day, Kane privately meets with the king and Eric, teaching the king Reversi, asking that Kane keep this board game a secret from the outside world. Kane pushes back, stating that he wants everyone to enjoy the game. But as their game wraps up, they both warn Kane to stop flirting so openly with their daughters, placing their hands on Kane's shoulder, who notes their grips tightening. Sitting down with the king's attendant Magna, Kane is happy to receive the key and the location to his new mansion the king had gifted him. Magna reveals that the king had an important meeting today, but upon hearing that Kane would come and visit, attempted to cancel all his meetings just to play Reversi with Kane. But luckily Magna convinced him not to neglect his duties. Funnily enough, Eric barges in, challenging Kane to a game of Reversi, prompting Magna and several other nobles to challenge Kane to a game as well. Heading out, Kane looks for his new mansion, realizing that the mansion is quite run down. Using the key to open the huge doors, Kane hopes that nothing scary happens, covering his mouth so as to not inhale the dust-filled rooms. Since the building is pitch dark, Kane notes how the building's magic stones are out of mana, making use of a light spell to help him see. Exploring the rooms, Kane notes that there is nothing left in the living room, but is happy that it's simple and nicely designed. But when Kane checks out the rest of the mansion, he's surprised to see how much space he has, wondering how many people he can fit in his mansion. Knowing that the building should be touched up first, Kane casts an instant cleaning and repairing spell all throughout the mansion, instantly fixing up and designing the place how he intended. As Kane falls onto one of his beds, he excitedly thinks about how this home will be his own place away from his family and parents, but hears some guests arrive. Running down to greet the guest, Kane calls out to Sylvia, who has brought several other maids with her, honored that Kane would ask her to serve him in his new home. On top of that, Colin the butler introduces himself, having been recommended by Sebas, the lead butler in Kane's father's mansion. Being honored to serve Kane, Colin states that he's heard of Kane's amazing feats, defeating the orc army alone and slaying powerful creatures in the monster forest near his home. With enough chit-chat, Sylvia takes charge, assigning her maids to begin cleaning the place, but when the maids go to inspect the house, they state that there is not a single spot that needs cleaning. Apologizing, Kane states that he had already sorted out all the cleaning with his magic, surprising Colin. But Sylvia is used to Kane's amazing feats, moving on to preparations to receive Kane's belongings. Colin chats with Kane, suggesting that Kane leave preparations here to them, and instead Kane heads back to his father's home, realizing that his older brothers will be returning home. Sitting at a table, Kane's older brothers commends Kane for achieving the title of Baron and a piece of land before them, prompting Rain to compliment her adorable Kane. Knowing that Kane has also recently been handed the keys to his mansion, the family suggests they visit Kane's new place, but both Kane's brother and Rain suggest that there may be ghosts haunting Kane's new place. As Kane's family arrives at Kane's mansion, they're stunned to see the place already cleaned up, impressed that Kane was able to turn an abandoned home into a brand new one. Scoping out the rooms, Kane's father notes that their mansion needs more decorations, as it's common for nobles to show off their achievements by displaying paintings, vases, armor and even monsters slayed. Coming up with an idea, Kane runs out to the main entrance to display the corpse of a monster he slayed, but when the maids, butler and his father find out that the monster corpse belongs to a red dragon, they are all shocked. Kane's father states that the dragon is a calamity-level monster, that even high-ranking parties would have trouble with, shocking Kane, having unintentionally performed another impossible feat. Since the dragon is so rare, the corpse normally goes on auction for 10,000 platinum coins or 10 billion yen. Meeting up with the rest of the family, Kane shows off his new invention, a toilet that blasts water to clean the people up, impressing Kane's mother and father. Before his family leaves, Kane learns that it's common courtesy for people with new homes to hold a housewarming guest. That night, Kane lays back on a chair, annoyed that he has to organize and invite people to his own party, but is happy to hear that Colin had already prepared for this, giving Kane a list of people that he reckons Kane should invite. Looking through the list, Kane wonders why he must invite Marquis Corgino, even though he doesn't like him, but Colin explains that it's basic etiquette amongst nobles to do so. Additionally, Kane learns that he's not allowed to invite the king himself, as only those of high rank can do so. Just then Kane also realizes he must prepare foods, drinks and gifts for everyone, but Sylvia states that Kane doesn't have to comply with normal parties and instead can add his own little twist to things. Getting to work, Kane crafts unique drink glasses for all his guests. Next Kane visits his chef, asking the chef to create special hamburger patties, asking Sylvia to taste the meal. When Sylvia combines the patties with Kane's new sparkling wine, she can't help but stuff herself with Kane's newly designed food. Before Sylvia gets too drunk off the sparkling wine, Kane is notified by Colin that the king has summoned him. Immediately heading to the royal palace, Kane sits before the king, Eric and Magna, all silently noting the king's anger. Breaking the silence, the king demands to know why he hasn't received an invitation to Kane's party, but Eric interrupts, flaunting his invitation from Kane, and reminding the king that by law Kane can't invite a noble like him. When the king reminds Kane that he'll be Kane's future father-in-law, Kane diffuses the situation by handing an invitation letter to his party, exciting the king, who states that he'll be bringing Tellus as well, prompting Eric to say that he'll be bringing Silk as well. Returning to his mansion, Kane notifies his maids that the king will be attending, shocking the girls, as they learn that Kane is engaged to the king's daughter. Regardless, Sylvia reminds everyone that they are to uphold their duties, no matter the guest. With the big night finally beginning, Kane and his father greet all the guests, spotting Eric and Silk and offering to show them around. Upon entering Kane's home, Silk and Eric note the huge red dragon, but before Kane can continue, Colin tells Kane to officially greet all his guests. With all the guests gathering in the main dining hall, Kane gives them all a glass that he had crafted, raising a toast to initiate the start of his party. Admiring Kane's crafted gift and the sparkling wine, Kane's parents and Eric tease Kane for being such a ladies' man, able to create food to enthrall Rein and Silk. Just then the king and his family arrive, sitting down and devouring Kane's new hamburger patty and gulping the sparkling wine. On top of that, the king and queen try out Kane's new toilet, demanding that Kane install an exact replica in their palace. Amazed with Kane's attention to detail, the king in front of everyone praises Kane, prompting applause from all of the guests. As the night continues, Corgino arrives, grinning from ear to ear as he mocks Kane's pathetic-looking home. When Colin attempts to warn Corgino about the huge dragon in the entrance, Kane stops Colin, allowing Corgino to scream, having not expected a huge monster in Kane's entrance. Next, Corgino sits down, trying out the sparkling wine and hamburger patties, but refuses to admit that the food is delicious. Before Kane can insult Corgino, Colin reminds Kane that Corgino's title of Marquis is higher than Kane's Baron title. Thinking of a plan, Kane starts to chat with Corgino, brushing off all of Corgino's insults, all whilst casting search spells, waiting for a specific person to arrive. When the specific person is within speaking distance, Kane makes Corgino insult him once more, only to step aside and reveal that the king had been listening to Corgino's insults. Instantly Corgino drops to his knees, wondering why the king would be here, but the king orders Corgino to act more appropriately, threatening to strip Corgino of his Marquis title. As Corgino flees the scene, Silk approaches Kane, impressed that he had purposely used the king to scare Corgino, but sadly the king had heard what Silk had said, reminding Kane that he is not only the king of the kingdom, but also his future father-in-law. Following Kane, we see him walking around the royal palace, meeting up with Dame and his men, informing Dame that Magna has asked Kane to leave some monster materials here. Looking around, Dame finds an armory room, asking Kane to leave the material here, but Kane says that unfortunately the space is too small. Thinking for a bit, Dame asks if Kane will be handing over huge amounts of loot just like the red dragon he has displayed in his mansion, but Kane states that it's not as big, stating that it's an earth dragon corpse. Shocked that Kane is able to easily slay and store such a huge monster, Dame allows Kane to leave the material on the training field outside, prompting Kane to retrieve the corpses from his item box, shocking Dame, as Kane single-handedly were able to defeat all these monsters. Inspecting the monsters, Dame wonders if Kane is a hero of sorts, suspecting that Kane has close relations with the pillars of this world. But when Dame notices that he's prying too much, he backs off from the questioning, stating that he'll have his knights begin to move all the monster material elsewhere. As Kane tries to leave, Dame stops him, suggesting that Kane stay as Dame wants to introduce Kane to his captain, curious how Kane would compare to them. Unable to escape the situation, Kane accepts, meeting up with the other royal knights, only to introduce himself. Wondering where the captain is, Kane learns that he'll start off with some mock battles first, as they wait for the captain, but when Kane gets worried that their captain is a mean person, Dame reassures Kane that their captain is none of the sort. Before Dame assigns a sparring partner, one of the knights speaks up, wondering if a 10-year-old like Kane should be fighting a royal knight. But when Dame hears this, he suggests that the knight be the one to test Kane's strength for himself. Facing off against each other, the knight states that he'll allow Kane to make the first move, prompting Kane to enhance his body with a boost spell, instantly disappearing, only to appear in front of the knight, breaking his wooden sword and ending the duel. Trying to leave once more, Kane is stopped by Dame, even more curious about Kane's potential, suggesting to have all of his men face off against Kane. Now surrounded, Kane readies his wooden sword against all of the royal knights, but before they can engage, a loud voice calls for them to stop. Leaping from a building, the captain of the royal knights demands to know why her men have surrounded a mere child, pulling Kane in and cuddling all whilst apologizing for her men's behavior. As Kane notices the captain's elf ears, the captain calls for Dame to explain the situation, learning that Kane is the child that was responsible for single-handedly slaying an orc army and saving the princesses. Grinning from ear to ear, the captain announces that she'll be dueling Kane, but is interrupted by Dame to ask the captain to at least introduce herself. Refusing to, the captain states that she would rather speak with her blade, ordering Kane to ready himself, but Kane voices his concern, stating that he has a wooden sword compared to the captain's real sword. Ignoring Kane's words, the captain slashes at Kane, forcing him to dodge and counter, but the captain flips backwards, getting pumped. With the captain casting boost on herself, she dashes towards Kane, who meets her blade, both exchanging continuous blows, as all the knights note how evenly matched the two are. Not wanting this duel to draw on any longer, Kane casts a greater enhancement spell, clocking up his movements. Dashing in close, Kane gets the captain to swing, but right as she does, Kane disappears, appearing behind her, only to place his wooden sword near her neck, ending their duel. Seeing the captain's eyes quivering, Kane watches as the captain announces that she wants to marry Kane, leaning in for a hug. Caught off guard, Kane reminds the captain that they've only met and he's 10 years old. Apologizing for the late introduction, the captain introduces herself as the captain of the Royal Chivalric Order of Esfort, Tijuana von Lieber. Tijuana also mentions that she has the title of Viscount and her father is a duke who oversees the Northern Forest. Finally, Tijuana states that she is an elf with 300 years of age, therefore age doesn't affect her decision with choice of man. Running and hiding behind Damien, Kane wonders if Tijuana should at least consult with her father first, but Tijuana states that she had left her home and decided to only return once she personally found her own partner, so Tijuana is not worried about whether her parents will accept Kane or not, as it's her decision. Coming up with another excuse, Kane states that he'll have to ask his own parents first, knowing that he's already engaged to Silk and Tellus already. Knowing that it would be unreasonable to demand Kane to simply marry her, Tijuana states that she'll personally ask for permission from the king, scaring Kane as he fears how he'll have to explain this whole mess to him. Before Kane can change Tijuana's mind, Tijuana orders Dame to bring Kane, all three heading to meet with the king. With Kane's father, Magna and the king in the room, Tijuana announces that she wants to marry Kane, shocking Kane's father and the king, wondering if Tijuana knows about Kane's two other engagements. Additionally, Kane's father asks if Kane knows the history of the elves, explaining since the elven race is naturally a physically stunning race, it was common for their kind to be enslaved, captured and sold. But the first ever king of their current kingdom, Yuya Terahirasawa Sfort, had created a rule to prevent discrimination regardless of race, ultimately promising the protection of the elven territory. Since Tijuana is the daughter to the king of the elven territory, Tijuana is considered a princess, meaning Kane is being given a marriage proposal on par with a royal princess. Since this is an important matter, the king reveals that both his daughter, Tellus, and Eric's daughter, Silk, are already engaged to Kane. But hearing this, Tijuana only falls more and more in love with Kane, knowing that such royal people also acknowledge Kane's potential. Seeing as Tijuana is adamant on marrying Kane, the king states that Tijuana first needs to write a letter to her father, informing him on her decisions, and only then will they all make the final decision on their marriage. Happy to hear that, Tijuana asks that Kane return with her back to Spar, dragging him before Kane can respond. Now alone, the king, Kane's father, Magna and Dame wonder how a 10-year-old child could defeat their kingdom's greatest swordsman. Speaking up, Dame states that he suspects that Kane is closely related to the pillars of this world, giving Magna the idea of testing Kane with an item they refuse to name. The next day, Dame runs into Kane again, learning that Tijuana had forced Kane to spar her endlessly yesterday, completely exhausted by at least he gained the title of Master Swordsman. Apologizing for his captain's behavior, Dame says that Tijuana solely focuses on fighting, pushing all the paperwork onto him. Suddenly Kane hears Tijuana calling for him, running away, but Dame grabs hold of him, offering to save Kane, only to drag him elsewhere. Sitting once again with the king states that he has an important item to give to Kane, handing Kane a book that has been left behind by the first king Yuya. Thankfully to be given such a gift, Kane flips through the book, amazed that such powerful spells existed, but upon hearing that Kane can read the book, the king reveals that language written in the book is one that no one in this world can read. Demanding to know who Kane is, Kane realizes the book is written in Japanese, thinking of ways to escape the situation, but reasons he should just come clean. Revealing that he has memories from a past life, Kane confirms that he is indeed his father's son, but he is also from Japan, the same place the first king Yuya was reincarnated from. Additionally, Kane reveals that he had personally met with the 7 gods of this world, showing off his actual status window. Everyone in the room is speechless, knowing that Kane is capable of wiping out and ruling the entire world by himself. Hearing this, Kane reiterates that all he ever wanted was to live a fulfilling life, and he doesn't want people to treat him differently because of his stats. Hearing Kane's words, the king agrees to continue to treat Kane how they were before, but wonders if Kane should truly be the ruler of their kingdom. Just then, Tijuana interrupts, showing off a letter she had received from her father, allowing her to marry Kane. As Tijuana steals Kane once more to train with, Eric notes how they won't have to worry about Kane using his power for evil, prompting the king to make everyone in the room keep Kane's powers a secret. That evening, Kane is forced to explain himself to Silk and Tellus, having just heard that Kane is marrying Tijuana, his third wife. Cutting to Kane as he reads through the book handed down by the first king, he realizes that Yuya had specifically written the book in Japanese, knowing that only others like him can learn about his life. Apparently, Yuya had also been transported here, having been in a car accident, but unlike Kane, Yuya was transported here in his original body. Just then Kane hears some voices, quickly closing the book right as Silk and Tellus check up on him. Wondering why Kane is so focused, Silk reasons that Kane must be studying hard for the upcoming school entrance exam, prompting Kane to go with that excuse. When the girls begin fighting over who can study with Kane, Kane cries that he is quite busy at the moment, swiftly leaving stating that he needs some alone time. Having escaped Silk and Tellus, Kane notices Tijuana approaching, asking if Kane would like to put on a show tomorrow to show off their skills to the capital, but Kane refuses to offer, apologizing as he runs off. Having returned to his mansion, Kane announces that he's finally turned 12 years old, donning some new armor, and heading to register as a new adventurer. Upon entering the guild, Kane is excited, spotting various adventurers all hanging out, but stops himself before he runs into one. With a red-hair adventurer asking if he can help Kane with anything, Kane states that he's simply here to register as a new adventurer, prompting the red-hair adventurer to cheer Kane on, asking Kane to be careful only to head off. Believing that he's seen that red-haired adventurer somewhere before, Kane brushes the thought off, making his way to the receptionist desk. Greeted by the receptionist, Kane applies for the role of an adventurer, handed forms that he must fill out. As Kane works through the questions, Kane wonders if he should put down his barren title, but reasons that the title shouldn't affect how he's treated. Collecting Kane's forms, the receptionist asks Kane to place a drop of blood on their guild device, allocating Kane the starting rank of F based on his mana capacity. Remembering that his two tutors, Millie and Nina, were D rank, Kane wonders what the girls are up to, thanking the receptionist Risha for all the help. As Risha wishes Kane best of luck on his future adventuring, the two are interrupted by some other adventurers, asking Risha to spend time with them, all whilst shooing away Kane. Knowing that he's been through this before, Kane nonchalantly dodges one of the adventurers' kicks, followed by evading another's punch. When the men feel like Kane's making fun of them, one of them begins to draw their blades, but before Kane can warn them, they all hear a voice. Having heard everything, the red-haired adventurers step in, demanding that the thug adventurers picking on Kane and Risha fight him instead, but the thugs clearly recognize the red-haired adventurer as Claude, running off as they don't want any trouble. With both Kane and Risha thanking Claude for scaring them off, Claude states that he was in fact helping those thugs, revealing that he knows Kane is quite strong, based on how he evaded the thugs' attacks. Sitting down to have a drink with Kane, Claude chugs some alcohol, giving Kane some fruit juice since he's still young. Asking about Kane's background, Claude is happy to hear that Kane has been training his body ever since he was a child, but when Kane mentions that he used to have tutors, Claude is reminded of someone, thinking nothing of it as he continues to enjoy his beverage with Kane. Claude reveals that he belongs to the Ice Flame Party, using fire magic with his sword all whilst his wife wields ice magic. Jealous to hear that Claude is able to adventure with his wife, Claude encourages Kane to form parties only with people he trusts, showing off his golden adventurer's card. Jumping from his seat to get a closer look, Kane is amazed to see Claude is already a rank, but Claude states he pales in comparison to Yuya, their first king, who was apparently triple S rank. Rambling on about how the triple S rank card is supposedly black, Claude is hit on the head by his wife, having been searching for him, mad that he's here drinking. When Claude tries to introduce his wife Lena to Kane, Lena simply gets more angry, as they were supposed to take on a quest together. Apologizing for keeping Claude to himself, Kane introduces himself to Lena, getting compliments on how polite and cute Kane is. With Lena asking Kane to be careful, she drags Claude out of the guild, heading to their quest, leaving Kane on his own. Heading to check out the quests for his G rank, he realizes they mainly involve boring cleaning and transportation quests, looking for other quests. Instead, Kane spots a goblin slaying quest, where the reward is based on the number of goblins slayed. Taking the quest and running out to slay some goblins, Kane notices Tijuana running over for a hug, learning that Tijuana and her army are training outside of the capital today. Upon telling Demon Tijuana that he'll be taking on his first quest as an adventurer, Tijuana offers to join Kane, dragging Kane along to his destination. With both Tijuana and Kane making it to a nearby forest, Tijuana is ecstatic, as she gets to spend time alone with her future husband. Knowing that they are wide open, Kane runs a search spell to locate nearby monsters, informing Tijuana that there are monsters up ahead. With both moving forward, they both notice a carriage broken down, spotting several goblins surrounding a helpless civilian. Both darting forward, Kane focuses on healing the civilians, all whilst Tijuana carves the goblins surrounding them, but more goblins begin to appear from the surrounding trees. Knowing that Tijuana may need some help, Kane casts a barrier spell around Tijuana, allowing her to instantly cut down all the weaker goblins, even striking down a bigger goblin with a single slash. Right as Tijuana finishes slaying all the goblins, several green lizards appear, prompting Kane to take over, asking Tijuana to get the civilian out of here, whilst he handles the creatures. Listening to Kane, Tijuana and the civilian are able to make it a good distance away, allowing Kane to unleash a powerful ice pillar spell. That evening, Nina and Millie visit the exact same location, expecting to slay green lizards from their quest, but instead there is a mysterious crater. Having returned to the guild, Kane reports that he ran into some green lizards whilst hunting goblins for his quests, shocking Risha, who notes that D ranks are able to take out single green lizards, but normally it takes a C rank to defeat multiple. Running to the chief, Risha states that she's found a boy that had single-handedly defeated 30 green lizards, asking Rada to bring the boy to him. Introducing himself as Cedric, who is taking over for the meantime as the guildmaster is speaking to a guest, Cedric demands to know where Kane got the material for the green lizards, accusing Kane of lying and stealing the material. When Kane tries to explain himself, Cedric states that he's never seen a G-rank commoner pull off such an absurd feat, revoking Kane's guild license immediately. Having made such a huge ruckus, the guild master enters, demanding to know what's got Cedric so fired up. Hearing Cedric explain the situation, the guildmaster laughs at Cedric's accusations, asking for his special guest to enter. Spotting Tijuana enter, Kane is shocked as Tijuana openly announces Kane as her husband, shocking everyone but the guildmaster. Apparently Tijuana was the guest giving the guildmaster advice on how to slay goblins and green lizards, based on her recent adventure with Kane. The guildmaster reveals to Cedric that Kane is in fact a baron, and is also the boy that saved the princess from the orc. Embarrassed, Kane apologizes for hiding all of this, as he only wanted to be treated normally and not have any special privileges due to his noble title. Just then, the guildmaster introduces himself as Tijuana's brother, surprising everyone, and instantly making Cedric apologize on his knees for his accusations. With Kane accepting Cedric's apology, the guildmaster states that Kane is clearly very strong. Therefore he states that Kane will be promoted to C rank, but Tijuana states that Kane is stronger than herself. Interested to hear that, the guildmaster offers to promote Kane to A rank, but states that Kane must capture some bandits, along with completing some other quests. With Kane accepting, the guildmaster thanks Kane for being so nice, even to his stubborn sister. Zooming out, we see that the gods are watching over Kane, all knowing that Kane should get much stronger, as they allude to a formidable dark being named Aaron, all agreeing that Kane should train under a trustworthy person. Heading back to study with Tellus and Silk, Tijuana barges in on their study session, mentioning their forest date, which only gets Silk and Tellus jealous. Following Kane several days later, he's seen waking up, wondering if he overslept, but suddenly hears Sylvia frantically entering his room, apologizing for forgetting to wake Kane up for his school entrance exams. When Kane tries to go back to sleep, Sylvia leaps onto the bed, dragging Kane out, asking that Kane get ready and eat breakfast. Following Kane out the door, Sylvia sincerely apologizes once again, but Kane reassures Sylvia that he'll be fine, heading off alone to school. As Kane turns the corner, he uses teleportation magic, easily making it on time to his exams day. Heading to the school's receptionist, Kane asks for his exam number, assigned the 285th student, and asked to find Class A, where his seat is number 10. Making his way over to class, he doesn't recognize any other students in the class, disappointed as he enters his exam room. Wondering what rooms Silk and Tellus could be in, the exam supervisor enters, beginning to hand out the exam papers, all whilst warning students that cheating will result in an immediate disqualification. Setting a 2-hour timer, the supervisor begins the exam, prompting Kane to skim through the questions, happy to see that the reading, writing and arithmetic questions are quite low level compared to his previous life, and on top of that the history questions are things all nobles are taught from an early age. Having answered all the questions, Kane decides to take a quick nap, but is interrupted by the supervisor, who wonders if Kane should be wasting time, but is surprised to hear that Kane only needed 30 minutes to finish the entire 2-hour exam. With the 2 hours up, the supervisor informs everyone that they'll all be moving on to the magic assessments now, moving out to a training field. The examiner states that all students are to pick a single target and unleash their strongest spell, reassuring everyone that the targets are fortified with barrier magic. Standing back and watching other students chanting their fire spells, Kane realizes that 12-year-olds aren't as strong as him, therefore he shouldn't use his Inferno fire spell. With Kane finally being called to show off his magic, Kane conjures a fireball without an incantation, compressing the air around the fire to turn the flame blue. Upon releasing it towards the target, the fireball not only pierces the target, but burns through the training area's walls, burning a path through the forest behind the wall. Realizing that even his low-tier magic is godly, Kane hears the supervisors instruct everyone to move on to the swordsmanship's exam, as the supervisors run to check out the damage caused by Kane's spell. Now with a different supervisor, Kane spots Claude among the adventurers who will be assessing the students, calling out to Claude, happy to see him. Claude offers to test Kane's skills, but Kane refuses, not wanting special treatment from the strongest adventurer here, but is told by the supervisor that he can't refuse an examiner's challenge. Now standing off against Claude with a wooden sword, Kane notes that he can at least fight seriously, knowing that Claude is quite high rank. Casting Boost, Kane instantly goes on the offensive, forcing Claude to parry Kane's strikes, impressed that Kane can keep up. Wanting to push Kane further, Claude casts Boost as well, both accelerating faster and faster, making Kane happy that he was the one to duel Claude, as Claude would have severely injured a weaker student. Just then the supervisor orders the two to stop, since they both are scaring the other students, having been exchanging strikes and lightning speed. Offering to take on a quest together in the future with Kane, Claude is sad to hear Kane refuse his offer, but just then the supervisors ask for Kane to leave, as his examination is over. Returning home, Kane is greeted by Sylvia, who's happy to hear that Kane was able to complete all his exams, already believing that Kane will be accepted by the school, but Kane asks Sylvia to hold back the excitement until the results are officially released. Several days later, Kane is before the king, explaining his reasons for clearly destroying the school's property when taking his exams. Apologizing for underestimating his skills, Kane reveals that he is capable of emperor-level magic, offering to show everyone, but everyone asks that Kane refrain from it, knowing that even Kane is unable to control the effects of emperor-level magic. More importantly, the king mentions how both Silk and Tellus didn't see Kane anywhere, asking to know where Kane went to take the exam. Thrown off, Kane states that he had checked into the exam just like any other student, and followed the supervisor's instructions. But the king states that there is a north entrance for nobles and a south entrance for commoners. It's revealed that Kane had accidentally taken the south entrance, and taken his exams with commoners. Flashing back, apparently Eric was in charge of overseeing the exams, laughing when he had found out that Kane had accidentally enrolled himself as a commoner, and had gotten full marks for his written exams, destroyed the training grounds and was on par with a rank adventurer. Since nothing can be done now, Kane is free to leave and check out his results, heading to the school with other students all gathering to check out their results. Hearing Silk call out to him, Kane greets Silk, learning that Kane had placed first for his entire cohort, Tellus is second and Silk is third. Teasing Kane for going overboard with the exams, Silk states that Tellus is mad that she didn't get to see Kane during the exams, but states that she better see Kane at the opening ceremony, threatening to punish him if he misses it. Before Kane heads back home, he spots Rain, who is helping guide other students around campus. Spotting Kane, Rain runs to embrace Kane, having not seen her little brother in ages, happy to hear that Kane had placed first in his entire cohort. Rain asks Kane what he'll be speaking about for his speech, surprising Kane as he learns that the highest-ranking student is delegated the role of an opening speech. Returning home, Kane reveals the good news to Sylvia, bringing Sylvia to tears, who finally can let go of her worries, running off to prepare a feast, as Corin personally congratulates Kane's amazing feat. With the opening ceremony day arriving, Kane is all suited up in his new uniform, entering the ceremony room, spotting his parents, Silk and Tellus. Sitting down with the girls, Kane hears other boys scoff at him, jealous to have two girls by his side, but is suddenly called to make his opening ceremony speech. Starting off by admitting that he took the wrong entrance during the exams, Kane is able to get the audience to laugh, allowing him to state that he plans to hopefully make friends regardless of their status and skills, getting an applause from everyone. Before Kane can leave the stage, he learns that the king has also offered to make a speech as well, standing awkwardly beside the king on stage. Praising all the students for making it through the exams, the king brutally pats Kane on the back, all whilst indirectly warning Kane to hold back and not go overboard with his powers. Heading to his first class, Kane sits with Silk and Tellus, listening as their homeroom teacher introduces herself as Elka von Portley. Hearing that all students must choose courses for themselves, Kane wonders if he can simply choose the adventure course, but is scolded by Tellus that he shouldn't be reckless, as Kane is a noble. Considering his options, Kane chooses the courses Nobility, Adventuring, Magic and Magic items, asking what the girls are choosing. Tellus shyly states that she has chosen Nobility and Internal Affairs, all in preparation for managing Kane's future domain. Additionally, Silk also states that she has chosen Nobility and Commerce, both girls excited at the thought that they can spend their foreseeable future with Kane. As the three head out of the classes, they spot Habit and his gang, bullying Parma, insulting a commoner like Parma for being around them. Interrupting them, Kane states that Habit and his men are pathetic, prompting Habit to threaten Kane, stating that he'll have his father ruin Kane's family's life. Just then, Habit notices Silk and Tellus joining the conversation, threatening to have the king intervene. With Habit and his men apologizing to Kane and Parma, they flee, allowing Parma to thank Kane, getting Silk and Tellus to ask who Parma is. Ordering Kane to kneel down, Silk and Tellus chat with Parma, getting along with Parma, but as Kane waits for the girls to finish up, he hears a mysterious voice beckoning him to enter the school's library. Upon opening the library doors, he's instantly transported to another location, noticing a man pouring coffee, introducing himself as Shina Kazuya. With Kane demanding to know why he's been transported here, Shina asks Kane to relax, as he'd been personally informed by the god Zenom and the other gods, that Kane is also reincarnated. Wondering who Shina is, as to also be able to communicate with the gods, Shina reveals himself as Yuya Terahirasawa Esfort, or the first king. Realizing that Yuya is before him, Kane wonders how Yuya is alive, since the book left behind by Yuya was supposed to be 300 years ago, wondering if Yuya is a ghost. With Yuya's permission, Kane scans his stats, wondering why Yuya has the title God of Creation. Standing up proudly, Yuya announces that they are currently in the world of Fabonil, a place he personally created, hence the title God of Creation, and even after 300 years, Yuya has not aged. Getting to the point, Yuya states that he's brought Kane here because the god Zenom and the other gods have asked for Yuya to personally train Kane. This makes Kane confused, as he already has been warned by not only the gods, but his peers, that he must hold back, but Yuya tests Kane's abilities. Asking Kane to steal a cookie from him, Yuya waits for Kane to make his move, only to evade and manifest a blade to stop Kane's movements. Wondering why Yuya is so serious about training him, Yuya reveals that Kane is the only one capable of fighting a powerful evil. Apparently 300 years ago, a powerful person had purposely cursed innocent civilians into fighting one another, having used an oracle to influence millions at a time, and caused massive bloodshed. The person Yuya is speaking of is Eren, the god of evil. 300 years ago, Yuya was able to seal off Eren, but ever since then, the seal has fractured, and it's about time that Eren resurrected. Wondering why Yuya doesn't just seal Eren once again, Yuya reveals that gods aren't allowed to interfere with the human world, and since he is a god himself, Yuya is unable to interfere. Additionally, Yuya mentions that Kane's past life will come into play, but before Kane can ask Yuya any questions, Yuya teleports himself and Kane to a beach, both standing in the ocean. Stating that from this point on, Kane must train with Yuya as his teacher, Yuya disappears, reappearing with a compass that'll help guide Kane back to the house Kane was just in. In this world, Kane is a quite low level, only being level 300, but Yuya wants Kane to be at least level 600 to have a chance against Eren. Since this task is meant to level Kane up, Yuya asks that Kane use no movement abilities, asking Kane to put all of his heart into this training, and to not worry about school, as 1 year in Yuya's world is the same as 1 day back in Kane's world. With no other choice, Kane makes his way into the nearby forest, immediately met with monsters that he slays. Back in Kane's world, Silk and Tellus have visited Kane's mansion, informing Sylvia that Kane has gone missing, but Tellus is confident that Kane will be alright, and it would be best to just wait for Kane to return. Back with Kane, we see that he's been captured by an orc, but before the orc can kill Kane, Kane manages to slay the orc with a surprise projectile. Falling to the ground, Kane is completely exhausted, as he hasn't been able to sleep for several months, beginning to despair, lying on the forest floor. Suddenly hearing a cry for help, Kane's zombie-like body begins moving in the direction of the voice, spotting a furry creature on the brink of death. Not wanting to put the creature out of its misery, Kane pushes himself, pushing every last ounce of mana he has out of himself, casting a heal spell on the creature, only to fall unconscious due to exhaustion. Upon waking up, Kane spots his furry friend defending Kane's body, having slayed the monsters that attempted to kill Kane whilst he was asleep. Befriending the lonely creature, Kane names it Haku, both fighting their way through the forest and spending valuable time together. With several years elapsing, Kane and Haku finally make it back to Yuya's mansion. Entering the mansion, Yuya is happy to greet Kane, but is more surprised to see that Kane has befriended a Fenrir, in the 4 years Kane had spent in the forest. Since Haku has formed a contract with Kane, Kane learns that he can call back and summon Haku anytime he wants, but is interrupted by Yuya, who states Kane will now be training with Durain. Setting out to train with Durain, Durain states that Yuya is far stronger than Durain, but Eren is stronger than Yuya, so Kane must first be able to defeat Durain. Before Kane can land a single punch, Durain puts Kane to sleep. Awoken by Haku, Kane wakes up, not recognizing the location, heading downstairs only to meet Durain's wife, Ruri. Spotting a pet dragon, Kane rushes to greet it, but is ignored, prompting Haku to begin growling at the rude dragon, and causing the dragon to fly around the house. Speaking up, Ruri demands everyone to settle down, serving up a delectable meal that brings Kane to tears, having been ages since he was able to taste such a hearty meal. Wondering what the others are doing, we cut to Silk and Tellus learning how to make pastries for Kane, scolded by Sylvia who notices the girls chatting and wasting time. With Kane continuing to train with Durain, Durain is impressed with Kane's growth, able to slowly withstand Durain's strikes, and even last through their training sessions. Before Kane had left to live with Durain and Yuri, Kane had asked Yuya to explain who Eren is, and how this all is related to his past life. Yuya states that Eren used to be a god in Kane's world, having been the god of amusement. Apparently Eren had used an oracle to start a death game in Kane's world, interfering with mankind, and hence was banished by the other gods. Additionally, Yui reveals that when he was brought to this world, Kane's parents had come with him, brought before the 7 gods, and tasked with stopping Eren. When Yuya and Kane's parents had confronted Eren, no magic would work on him, so Yuya and Kane's father pushed Eren back, but were caught off guard when Eren pulled a sneaky trick, assassinating Kane's mother with projectile magic. Enraged, Kane's father chooses to sacrifice himself, distracting Eren long enough for Yuya to seal Eren away, but at the cost of Kane's parents' life. Using Yuya's story as fuel to get stronger and not let his loved ones die, Kane finally surpasses Durain in combat, thanking Durain for all the lessons he learnt, but rushes to Yuya, where he spots his parents' gravestones. Now realizing why his parents had left his side at such a young age, Kane thanks his parents for never forgetting him, shedding tears at their gravestones. As a final test, Yuya holds out a biscuit once more, but this time Kane manages to grab it from Yuya. With Kane finally ready, Yuya allows Kane to return home, but first transforms Kane back to his child self. Before Kane leaves, Durain appears, asking Kane to take his dragon pet with him, forming a contract and naming the dragon Jin. Promising to visit Yuya and Durain in the future, Kane bids the two farewell, but not before Yuya hands Kane a sword and a note, asking Kane to give it to the current king. Teleported back to his mansion, Kane is greeted by Sylvia, Silk and Tellus, who had been waiting for him. Having baked Kane's favorite cookies, Kane breaks down into tears, stuffing himself with the cookies. Check out one of our other videos on the screen or in the info card above. Subscribe, like and comment.